he'll be back next week. Thanks, Dan. So for the working group meeting this morning, we do have just one new member, Rachel Keogh. Rachel, if you are on the call today, we usually do give new members the opportunity to introduce themselves. So if you'd like to introduce yourself, and I'm just taking a quick check to see if I see her on the call. I do not. So we'll give it back for a future one. So if there is anyone else that has joined, this is their first meeting and you haven't had the opportunity to introduce yourselves, I'll just give you an opportunity now to do so and just turn your mic and your camera on.
Good morning. Oh, would you like to go first, Geoff?
Sure, I can. Yeah, sorry. I'm Geoff Pettit. I'm the new sales manager at Haggerty Creek Ag Robotics. So my background, I live in Norfolk County. I grew up on a tobacco farm. I've been in horticulture for the last 6 years. I was part of a startup out of Halliburton Forest last year, producing biochar out of bio-waste, and then joined Haggerty in the new year. So I'm pleased to meet everybody. Looking forward to working with you.
Thanks. Nice to meet you, Geoff.
Excellent. I'm Lisa Klimstra. I live in Waterloo Region and I work for Sengen, and I've been with Sengen for nearly 6 years and I love my job. I love working with SMEs as well as the ecosystem across Canada. We have recently launched a new program funded by SIF, the Strategic Innovation Fund, to support SMEs through validating their digital technology solutions within living labs across Canada. 8, in fact. I can't name what the entities are that we are working with, but I say that 2 of the living labs, one out in Western Canada and one within Ontario, do support agriculture. Additionally, we are working with robotics living lab specifically. So I know that can support every vertical, including agriculture. So I'm happy to participate in this group and hope that some potential projects as well as potential adopters could potentially come through this group, or sponsors for calls for proposals to solve the problems within this sector. So thank you for having me.
Fantastic. Thanks, Lisa. Welcome. Was there anyone else that wanted the opportunity to introduce themselves? Josiah, I think I see you raise your hand. I think you were muted though, or we cannot hear you if you're speaking.
All right, I want to switch mics. Is that coming through now?
Yep.
All right, fantastic. Cool. My name is Josiah. I'm a recent graduate from the University of Waterloo. I've been working for the past couple of months doing research at Waterloo for developing simulation software for microfluidic technologies. And recently just transitioned into full-time work with a company called XBI doing system modeling as well. Yeah, just grew up doing 4-H and a lot of agricultural involvement, ran a couple of businesses in high school in the agricultural area, and looking to stay in touch with ag tech, as that is where my passion is, and I really hope to work in the ag tech field and maybe start a company down the road. So thanks for having me, and looking forward to being part of this group.
Fantastic. Nice to have you, Josiah. All right. Okay, if there's anyone else, I'll just give a few seconds, and then if not, we'll move into our presentation. Okay, thanks for everybody for introducing yourselves. So we will move into the next part of our agenda this morning, which is our presenter. So we're happy to welcome Geoff Farintosh from the University of Guelph, who will be providing an update on the Oreo Farm Droid and Piquetta trials in the Holland Marsh. And Geoff, if you want to go ahead and share your slides, just while I'm talking, just so you can get those up, and then we'll turn it over to you.
Okay, does that look all right?
Yes, it looks great.
Great. Okay, let me just moved around. Thank you, Bridget, and thank you everyone for listening to me talk a little bit about robots today. My name's Geoff. I'm a research technician here at the Ontario Crops Research Centre, Bradford. In this group, a lot of people just call it the Muck Crops Research Station, Muck Station. I was asked to give a quick update on the projects that we're working on that are supported, at least in part, by this group. So today I'm going to focus on the Oreo, Farm Droid, and the Piquetta. I think around a month or 2 ago, someone said the academic presentations on here usually aren't too practical, so I'm hoping I can change that today. We're located here in the Holland Marsh. This is the station. A lot of you have been here, driven by, you see that really nice dark soil. I'll kind of skip through the background and focus on the updates. But for those of you who don't know, this area is super high organic matter. That's what you're seeing with that dark soil, 50 to 80%. This is the result of it being artificially drained around 100 years ago. And what's left is this large, like 7,000 acre continuous pocket of incredible soil. What we really grow well is carrots, onions, and then we have some other crops in smaller acreages too, some celery, beets, stuff like that. Of course, weeds also grow really well here, but I'm not going to leave this image on too long and trigger anyone on the call. I just wanted to make the point that these are high value crops. And here where we are, it's the most concentrated production of carrots and onions like anywhere in the country, but it's still relatively low acreage. As a result, the chemical companies, they don't make as much off these crops. They aren't making as many products. This means growers have less options. They can't rotate products. This leads to resistance issues. It's just a nasty cycle all around. And in the end result, it means growers have to spend a lot on labor. Some will bring in teams to hand weed, often over 100 people, and they'll be doing that all day long. Not only is this expensive, but it's also unreliable. You aren't always sure when you can get people in. And to combat this, some people feel that robots might be the answer. So it's fun being on these calls and going to these different meetings and seeing all these different robots, all kinds of really cool, fun ideas. But not all of them are going to pan out. Not all of them are going to pan out for our growers. I like to give the stat related to the automobile industry, saying in 1908, there were 253 different companies making cars, but by 1929, there were only 44 left, and 80% of the cars were being made by just three.
I know.
So we're kind of looking to do the same with robots. We're trying to find which ones are going to be the winners for us. We started this in 2022. We looked at the Le Chèvre from Nexus in Quebec, and we started working with Nio from France. Their first robot we had was the Dino. But today I'm going to focus on the Oreo and the Farm Droid, so I'll jump into that. The Farm Droid is a seeding and weeding robot. It's got this big solar panel on the top, and it kind of slowly crawls through the field. When we're seeding with it, as it drops each seed, it geotags it. So in essence, it kind of remembers where it puts it. And this means when it comes back, it can kind of go around it. It has intra-row weeding tools. We aren't using this too much because we're mainly growing onions, but it's a useful feature to have. So when we first got this robot, we dropped it off and we just started to seed some onions, seeing how it would do. The problem we quickly ran into is to get the planting density that we wanted, we had to go very slowly. This is kind of what our emergence looked like, just planting in a single line. So anything beyond 200 meters, we really saw the emergence fall off. This is a problem, of course, because we can't be going 200 meters in large grower fields. It's just not practical unless growers are buying, hundreds of these robots. I won't jump into it too much today, but we found that the main issue within the seeding system was actually the seed valve here. Just to be able to keep up dropping a seed every 3 centimeters was causing a lot of issues. So we started to play around with it. On the left of this image, this is just the way the robot was intended to seed in a single row, 3.4 between. You can see below, it makes a nice, perfectly straight single row, but it takes a really long time. In the middle, this is what it would look like if we seed conventionally with a tractor and like a Stanhay seeder. These are 5 centimeters between seeds, but it's also a double row. So a lot more seeds being put out. To try to match this, we took one of our normal seeding discs and we just drilled a bunch of holes in it. So rather than 5, we had 15, but we didn't tell the robot this. So it would drop every 3 and kind of create these clusters of 3. We were hoping that this would take some stress off the seed valve and allow us to plant a bit faster. The downside of this, as the conventional on the right was putting out still way more seeds, way more onions that were coming up compared to when we were seeing with the robot. And we were worried what this was going to look like when it came to harvest. But surprisingly, this is all our first year of data. We actually had no significant differences in harvest numbers. We did see differences in the size of onions. When we were planting those triple clusters, the onions actually pushed out. We got a lot bigger onions that kind of made up for the weight. So this was a nice surprise. I'll just show a visual of what that looked like. So again, on the left, that's the single row. It worked well. The onions kind of pushed out. Sometimes some got squished a little. The middle is the conventional. I think our seeding rate might have been a bit high this year. So I just want to put that as a caveat. The year after, I think we improved it to make a bit more of a fair comparison. And on the right, you see how those triples really fill out, especially on this muck soil. It can kind of push and move around. After this, we took it out to a grower field. Again, this was our first year untested. We didn't have any of those results yet. So we just decided to go slow and safe. We planted single rows, and they came up great, 3.4 centimeters apart. But the problem was, again, we were going at 225 meters an hour. So we were only able to do like 2 acres a day. And when growers have hundreds of acres, it just doesn't make sense. So we started playing around with making the best seeding this we could. It's really nice. You have technology available now, like 3D printers. I actually have a bunch of failed prototypes on my desk. They all look very similar, but even just minute changes to the angle of the hole, the loft on it, really makes a big difference. And through this year, when we seeded, we were really able to crank up the speeds. So rather than being at 200, 225, we were actually getting better emergence numbers at 550, 650. So we were more than doubling, almost tripling our speed. I also played around with the valve, just turned that off altogether, letting the seeds fall right through. But it appears that's no longer a limiting factor. So I think there's room to increase the speed even more. This year, these are results for yield. I think we've kind of dialed everything in a little bit. So we're seeing no significant differences across the board. I'm not expecting the robot to outperform what farmers have been trying to perfect for decades and decades now. So I think really positive results there. This is at our own trial. In a grower field, a lot of asterisks in this one, but I just wanted to show it. Really good results from the robot planting in triple clusters this year in the grower field. The middle one here, this is a trial he seeded conventionally. It's actually lower, but this is also a different variety. So I just wanted to point that out. The transplants were the same variety as the ones planted by the robots. They had larger onions, but they were also transplants. So they were put in with a huge head start as well. So overall, really promising on the seeding side, what we're seeing in terms of yield. In terms of weeding, this robot comes with these little tines. We tried them in the first year. We found they'd kind of get clogged up with weeds, and then they'd end up pushing soil onto the onions. We tried ways of knocking it off, but it just wasn't ideal. So this year, Harry created a new weeding tools, just kind of more traditional knives to cut through them. We still need to do some improvements on these, mainly keeping the height consistent as we go through the field. Again, this was in a grower field, so I don't have the best numbers, but actually Dexter from Haggerty went out and he would mark sections of the field. He'd count all the weeds within it, and then he'd count them after watch as the robot went through. He found the robot was able to reach around 73% of the weeds, and it either removed, cut, or buried 78% of those weeds that it reached. This isn't a great metric. I would like to see how many were actually killed, do a trial on station or something. But overall, that works out to around 56% of the weeds in the field. This robot was at least significantly damaging. Of course, the goal is always 100%, but if we can remove half the weeds in this field, cut back on half the labor, I think it's something that we should continue trying to improve and explore. We want to keep the robot working in the field as long as possible, but as the onions get bigger, that becomes more and more of a challenge. This robot came originally with a 3-wheel design. That caused a lot of problems too. Haggerty again ordered a kit where you can add a 4th wheel, so that was great this year. We could keep it out there a bit longer. I think for next year, or I guess this year now, we're gonna play around with creating some kind of shields so we can push the onions where we want to go. It's kind of complex geometry down there, but we actually have a 3D scanner over here now, so we're hoping we can use that to kind of map it out and find the best way to channel onions through and keep the robot out there working longer. Again, just making it a bit more valuable. In terms of that, FarmDroid themselves are actually coming out with their own sprayer now too, so they don't want it to just be a seeding and weeding robot. It'll also spray, and hopefully you can just have it kind of do everything right up until harvest, at least in a perfect world. So that's kind of where we're at with the FarmDroid. The Oreo is a bit more of a open book. Nio just kind of sends you this robot, and it's up to you to figure out how to make the best use of it. It comes with a 3-point hitch, so you can put on anything you want, and it'll autonomously work through the field. It's got onboard RTK, GPS. It doesn't need a base station or anything, fully electric. And I think the big advantage of this robot is just so much quicker. It's going around 5.5 kilometers an hour. So we've used this robot for a few different things, just going out there, marking fields, setting up our trials, making straight lines. This year, we also used the robot to help some growers set up their trials. It's really nice when I'm out there seeding, I can just have it running in front of me and follow behind it in the tractor. We first got it, we started playing around with cultivators. They have a system from Till and Hague. You kind of see the camera on top there. And then with this camera, it can see the crop and adjust the hitch to keep the cultivator centered. It might be a useful tool for some, and it's impressive that it works in all different conditions, whether it can barely see the crop or with the crops buried in weeds. So I just wanted to mention that as an option that's out there. Where we are, a lot of growers, they want to be spraying with their stuff. So we built a sprayer to go on the robot. It's got 2 different tanks, and then we have 2 different booms at the back. One so you can spray right on the crop directly, and one so you can spray in between the crops if you want to do a non-selective herbicide or something. I'll just run through some pictures here. In our first year, we had these kind of Home Depot buckets. It wasn't the best system. You couldn't really adjust them depending on crop size. So this year we, again, 3D printed, made a bit of a better setup so we could adjust them and keep it useful longer in the field for a longer time. This system is all controlled by a Raven system, CR7, that Haggerty again provided, and they got that all set up and running. So this robot that came, very bare bones with nothing on it. In time, we have all these screens on it now, and it's able to do a lot of different tasks. This year, we were comparing it directly to a tractor in the field. We had trials both on muck and mineral soil on both beets and carrots. Say in this picture here, you can kind of see every 4 rows would be a different rep, so that the robot would be in charge of 4, the tractor would be in charge of the next 4, and it was all kind of randomized like that. We have a master student, FX. I'm not sure if he's on the call today, but he's working through a lot of those numbers now, and he'll have a report coming out in the next couple months to share some of that. I think for the most part, there weren't significant differences, but there were some where the robot didn't perform as well as the tractor, but I think that's mainly operator error on us. I think one reason is we tried to make that Till and Hague system work, but it takes up a bit of space, so we actually couldn't use the best cultivators. I think we kind of overvalued the ability for it to stay centered. But yeah, later on the season, we switched to a better cultivator. I don't have a picture of it here, but we'll have ways, I think, that to get it on par with tractors. Another failure, we've been playing around with wick weeders, especially on beets that have basically no herbicide options left. We want to find a way to control weeds a bit better. So we're working on that. It still needs to go back to the drawing board a bit. We were killing more beets than we wanted. I think a big goal for next year will be trying to seed with the Oreo as well. Haggerty had these wizard seeders. They use a vacuum to pull the seed. I think they work well on mineral soil, but on the muck soil, there were a lot of challenges, especially just keeping the height right. We've played around a little bit with adapting them to work better here, but I think for next year, we might do a combination of both. I think we'll continue working with them, but we're also going to try to put on something more like a traditional stand hay seeder. Maybe not this one, the picture with the big vacuum. We might just do a ground driven one. And then hopefully we can do carrots, we can do beets and even onions, and I think compare it directly against the farm grade. The final thing I want to talk about just quickly is the Piquetta lens. Lens is their leaf evaluated nutrient system. Basically what you can do with this is you grab a leaf, you can put under a scanner, and it uses spectrometry and some advanced AI machine learning stuff I don't understand too well to figure out and give an estimate on 13 different macro and micronutrients. This one's out of New Brunswick, Xavier and his team there. They originally used it for potatoes. There's certain nutrients they really want to keep an eye on. And being out there, they'd send their samples back to Ontario. And by the time they got them back, it would often be too late to make the correct management decision. So here in the Holland Marsh, we've been trying to make a model for onions. And we're seeing some promise. I have the 13, I think we only have 3 right now where we're starting to see good correlations, but that model was built just on 1 year of collection. Now we have a second year to add to that as well, so we're hoping to really refine it. We're also developing a carrot and a celery model, and we're going to have trials where we're comparing the Piquetta and the lab results to make fertilizer recommendations. We did this last year, but the field it was in was kind of poor on everything. So both of them were just saying, like, yeah, pour on way more fertilizer. So we'll be in a better field this year and see how that goes. In terms of future work with these projects, again, with the farm droid, we're going to try to improve the tooling to get better weeding efficiency. We're trying to hit 10 acres a day seeding up from 2 or 3 acres. I think we can probably squeeze on more seeding units instead of 4, maybe do 8, and continue to improve our discs. And also, yeah, extends the working season without damaging the crop by adding some kind of guards. For the Oreo, we want to start seeding with it. If it could seed, weed, spray, do everything up to harvest, that would be awesome. It'd be really fun to make some comparisons then against the tractor and also against the farm droid. We're hoping to bring it to a commercial field. We imagine we'll be able to plant onions much, much faster. And, if it's going 4 or 5 times as fast, even though it's more expensive, it'll be interesting to see how it pencils out. And a lot of the work will be doing those ROI calculations. We'll continue to improve the wick weeder, other implements. I've heard Haggerty might have a laser weeder or something in the works. But yeah, a lot of exciting work going on. So that's just a quick update on what we've been working on. I want to thank, of course, this working group giving us a chance to talk and being involved in these projects. Haggerty for supporting them, OMAFA, Picetta, the Agri-Food Innovation Alliance, our cooperating growers. Beyond that, I think it's important to point out that this project has benefits beyond the more immediate ones. It's introduced us to a lot of different technologies here at the stations. Aside from 3D printing parts for the robots, we're also making like carrot weevil traps here that are more effective, way cheaper to make. We have 3D scanners now, so we're trying to replicate spore traps for 1% of the cost. We're seeing lots in terms of collaboration. Often technology, the use case isn't always obvious. But I think through this group and community as a whole, we're seeing lots of exciting projects coming up. So yeah, hopefully in the future, we can continue improving life for growers and agriculture in general. So with that, I just want to thank you all for listening. And yeah, if we have time, Bridget, I'd be happy to talk about any questions, comments, or ideas.
Awesome. Thank you, Geoff. And yes, we do have time for questions. So I will open up the floor to questions for Geoff. And I have a few of my own if we don't have any takers. And just to do a quick housekeeping item, if you do have a question, you can just throw it in the chat or click the heart button at the bottom of your screen to raise your hand. So first question from Debbie. She's looking to know what kind of sensors you're using. Are you edge computing? What's your gateway? And are you, in terms of connectivity, what are you guys using for that?
Well, I think it's all kind of case by case depending on the robot. I think we probably are a lot of sensors that we aren't using that we'd like to implement in the future. As we have these robots moving through the fields, we'd kind of like to do as much as possible. I think we're looking at other implements we can add on. We're looking, if we could be having the robot taking the tissue samples while we're out there, just try to combine it all together. But I think without a more specific case by case, I'm not sure how to answer all of that. It might be a bit too high level for me. Unless Chuck has something to add.
Well, I did, and I think one of the challenges with sensors is that we have to get the robot to actually drive up and down the field first, and jumping right to sensors and edge computing and connectivity and all those kinds of things. That's all fine to talk about, but the robot actually has to successfully complete a very basic task first, and honestly, we're only just getting there. The fancy stuff is going to come second and third. And people assume that these robots are better than what they actually are. And I think Geoff has laid this out very clearly that, we're probably at 80% maybe on getting the robots to successfully complete a task. And the next, and I think that's really where we're at first. So it's not that we don't care about these other things, but I think we need to go baby steps.
Awesome. If there's any more to that question, you can, oh yeah, she just was looking to confirm how they're collecting the data. All right, Sean has asked, how tolerant or resilient are the onions to the mechanical weed control if they get injured?
Yeah, that's something we worry about, especially because, onions have that bulb under the ground, and we also want to be cutting the weeds right under the ground. We're trying to be careful that our knives aren't going to have any contact there, and we do have to move them throughout the season to space them out. Luckily, the farm droid is probably the most precise robot we have. That seems to be within like a millimeter. So we can set it up right beside the onions, and we actually haven't had any issues yet. We do probably leave a small barrier, especially as they push out. I don't believe onions are very resilient if we were to cut them at all. But with the soil pushing over from weeding and stuff like that, we found that hasn't really caused any issues. They just kind of move around in that muck soil. So overall, we haven't had any problems yet, but maybe we haven't pushed it enough either. Maybe we should be pushing it to the point a bit closer to where we are starting to find some injuries.
A little bit related to that, you mentioned in your presentation, like obviously the different implements and things like that between yourself, 3D printing things, Haggerty, kind of adjusting implements. Like, how much of the original early trial stuff was just finagling the machine to work better in the fields, like in terms of a percentage of time?
Yeah, there's a lot of finagling. When we get these robots, also like things like the farm droid, we have to do our trial here at the station, and then in the same day, we have to send it out to the grower and start doing the trial there. This work is so season dependent. Growers want all their crops in the ground in the same week. So yeah, when we first got the farm droid, a lot of it was, yeah, we started seeding our first trial, we immediately realized it's not going to be fast enough. And we try to find a solution. We just started getting drills and putting holes in and playing with it. Now we have a bit more time to continue to improve, but yeah, no, it can be tough. That's a hard part about agriculture, is dealing with those problems in the moment.
And I think we've heard that from like a few other presentations too. Like it's especially harder with the field crops. Like with the mushrooms, like when they mentioned, there's multiple different stages, but here it's like you have a very short window. And I guess related to that, like the grower that you worked with, like what kind of feedback did they share regarding, like, obviously it's a trial, so they're expecting there to be setbacks and things like that. But what did you hear from them?
I think it's been very positive. We were very lucky to have this grower and that they were willing to give us a chance to try some more extreme things. They're actually willing to push it more than I am most of the time, which makes me nervous sometimes. They made the call this year that they wanted to go with the new 3D printed discs, even though we never actually tested them yet. They just had faith in it. And we have seen really, really good results. And they're interested enough that, yeah, they want to start comparing it now to the Oreo. And I think they're looking to make a purchase in the future.
Fantastic. Any other questions from the audience? So Peter's asked, have you considered using row units with flighted belts such as precision planting to increase precision at higher speeds?
Yeah, so I think for the Oreo, we're going to be looking at a few different seating solutions. On the farm grid, you kind of have to work within their own little mechanical ecosystem they set up there, but the Oreo is more of an open book. So yeah, we've been trying a few different things right now. We're just trying to find the best balance between cost, results, for this coming season to get started with that.
Kind of related to that, oh, sorry, Chuck, go ahead.
Well, I think just to answer Peter's question too, like there's also a balance between reliability and simplicity as well as efficacy. And because one of the challenges is with every piece of technology that you add to the unit, you add a risk of a failure point. And one of the advantages that the farm droid has in its own ecosystem is its simplicity. And so there's a mixture between how much complication do you add, and is it going to be reliable? And I stress over these things all the time because everything that you add, how do you make all these things work together? And the flighted belts and things from Precision and from John Deere and those machines, they're designed to work at much higher speeds than what we're trying to run at. They're looking at 16 kilometers an hour, that's not really what we're trying to do. But they're also working at much lower populations. So like there's in different seed types and those kinds of things. So they don't always fit.
Kevin.
Yeah, I think just to expand on Chuck's, we're planting at like 300,000 seeds an acre as opposed to 30,000. And we're also trying to work within the realms of the farm droid equipment as well, right? It's got the seeding unit is integrated into the computer system, to monitor everything that we can't add our own seeding units because that's integral in how it's how the whole robot is built that you're not able to put your own units on it because it's integrated into how the GPS works and how it places seeds and everything like that. So
Kind of interesting. We had talked a little bit in a previous meeting about like the right to repair. That's obviously with like the more large scale farm like equipment, and especially not having as much knowledge on my end in terms of how these trials go normally. Like, do you find with the robots, because it's a newer solution, that you are doing a lot more like tweaking things, or is that pretty common regardless of the type of like a conventional versus a robotic solution?
Um, yeah, I'd say there's a good amount of tweaking, and I think a lot of these companies still want to handle a lot of it themselves. Nio is here, often doing the tweaking themselves. They're continuously making improvements to their robot. Um, FarmDroid too. I think both these companies, Nio especially, they really appreciate us doing the tweaking for them. They don't want to be in the business of tweaking. They'd rather have someone like us out there making the mistakes and also making the improvements for them. They've asked if they could show off pictures or videos from our robot now and with the sprayer and whatnot, saying, "Hey, look what these people have done with it." So I think it's good. Sometimes companies are hesitant to share, their files so we can 3D print what they have or modify them. There's a bit of that going on, but for the most part, companies have been really good to work with.
Well, thank you. And so I would say kind of related to that, we had talked a little bit. I know Chuck and Tyler and myself have kind of been looking at like a robotic competition where we have some sort of element in terms of like if you were to have students coming out of high school, university, that kind of thing, and they were to design a program that was, a little bit fun, but also with a goal of trying to get more people kind of engaged with agriculture and aware of opportunities. Is there anything from a robotic standpoint that you right away are like, you know what, I think it would need to do this or it would need to focus on here to start with, just because you've seen a lot of robots that have the issue with that's where the failure point is?
You mean like in terms of like a specific challenge or?
Yeah, a challenge, a task, or like a model, like when you said 3 wheels versus 4, like maybe you say, okay, we want a base model to have 4 wheels because we know that it works better or whatever.
Yeah, I think there's a
I'm putting you on the spot, but
few things you'd have to do. I think, looking at the competitions they have in the States with the MEGA, the Farm and G one, there they kind of give the students the platform that can, for the most part, already go and drive straight, which is Chuck has mentioned. Some of those basics are really important. Beyond there, vision systems are huge. Yeah, I don't know if a specific one. I think it'd almost be good to give them the freedom if we could supply a platform and then let students figure out what problem they want to challenge beyond that. I think that's an interesting way to approach it.
definitely. And we have talked with the competition that runs in the States too. They've given us a lot of feedback, which is helpful. So awesome. Thanks, Geoff. I know I put you on the spot a little bit there, but it's just kind of it's part of the planning, right?
Yeah, no worries. I'm happy to chat about it, and I'll be at FEAR next week. I'll be at OBSC giving a similar presentation, and yeah, also feel free to email me, anyone. I'm always happy to talk about robots and stuff.
All right. First Robotics should have a farm. So Taylor has said First Robotics should have a farm challenge. I don't think they've ever had an outdoor challenge. Yeah, we'd love to see that. Xavier.
Great presentation, Geoff. Happy to hear about the robots and all, and the quick update on the Pagetta models. Just wanted to fill in kind of with the models this year. So like we always go through a season of data collection. Our pipeline for new models is first year we kind of get NPK, some macronutrients, kind of on par with what we're seeing with the golf trial with onions. Then second year we fill it out a bit more. That's when we kind of get an initial calibration, which we're going through right now, calibrating. So this upcoming year will actually be, if the data pans out as it did with corn, canola, and potatoes, we'd be releasing kind of a beta model or initial model to all of the lens users out there. So we had about 30 agronomists this year. We're hoping to get to up to 80. And that just like floods in a lot of data for initial validation. So part of that is that we cover the a couple weeks of data sampling for all those users. So I know onions won't be as popular as, let's say, corn, but we should get, not just Guelph using it, revalidating it, but maybe a dozen other folks from across North America scanning onions, sending it out. So that's more kind of where we get to a more mature model where we can get a bunch of different regions, lab offsets, even from different labs, as well as varieties and conditions. So we're trying to like fill out, we haven't seen really high manganese onions. Well, we need to go and find them basically. So with this initial calibration, we can kind of take that and run. And I think we're hoping to also, with this initial model for 25, maybe offer it to some growers around, kind of depending on what we get back on the data side. But yeah, it's been going well. It's on par with the other crops in terms of development, which is good to see because onions are quite different than the usual crop. So happy to answer any questions there as well. Thank you for including it in the presentation, Geoff.
Oh, thank you, Xavier. I didn't know you were on the call today. And yeah, I think as we feel more comfortable with that model, I think this year we might have it open to growers so they can actually bring in their own samples. And not only will they have access to the results, but also we'll be able to feed the model even more information. So yeah, I'm excited to work ahead with that and see how it goes.
So are there any other questions for Geoff and or Xavier, just because he gave a bit of a presentation as well? All right, seeing none, I will just mention as well, if there are any working group members on the call that missed their presentation a few weeks ago, we do have two projects that have funding available. So we have the Agrobotics Working Group project, which is funded by OMAFA, but then we also have Innovation Farms, which is funded by FCC. Very, very complementary programs. You'll see both of them kind of assisting with these trials that Geoff was talking about and some of the other ones that have been mentioned. But as we go into this coming summer, we are still looking for other trial opportunities. So if there is a product field crop specific at the moment that you're looking to trial in Ontario, there is a form on our website under the Contact Us page, the Agrobotics Working Group website to be specific, and there's information there if you want to submit a query. All right, so thank you, Geoff, for your presentation again. It's great to kind of hear. It's really nice to see visuals of all the different research that's being done just to kind of be able to cross-compare with the data. We're going to move into the next part of our presentation, which is the conferences, meetings, field tours, demonstrations. So I do want to mention that the Eco-Robotics Information Day is scheduled for February 13th, and there's a link to that on our agenda that Dan sent out this week, and that will be taking place in the Holland Marsh Winery. Is there anybody on the call that wanted to speak to that event just briefly? Okay. Next up, we have we'll have a booth at the Ontario Fruit and Veg Convention in Niagara Falls, February 19th to 20th. We'll also have a booth at the London Farm Show and Ottawa Valley Farm Show. And just as a reminder as well, at London Farm Show, that Friday meeting, which is on Friday, March 7th, will take place in person at Western Fair. We are going to try to also do it virtually through some software that's in the building, but if you can make it down, we'd love to have you there. And there is a registration link just so we know roughly how many people are coming. The Grand River Agricultural Society Spark Symposium is April 15th, and then the working two dates already this summer for the working group demos. First is July 8th at Bradford, and the second is July 22nd at Simcoe. If there are any other events that I did not mention, just going to give it an opportunity for that. All right. Moving into project updates. So we don't really have any for this week, aside from just, again, the mention that we are still looking for research projects. So if you have an idea that you want to suggest, to send it through to us. Dan is also still always looking for speakers and presentations. We love, especially when it's like, hey, not everything worked. This is the trials and tribulations of what we found. So you can definitely reach out to him with ideas you have or people you know that might be interested in presenting. And he also sent out the email with the survey for contact information. So if you haven't had a chance to fill that out, if you could do so, that just allows us, when somebody asks for another group member's contact information, for us to give it to them. It's not publicly posted. Job board is up on our website. If you have any jobs you would like to be added to that, please let us know. And then the funding announcements opportunities. I do want to mention three. The first one is the Polaris Pitch Competition and Showcase actually closes today. So that link is up in the agenda, but I'll also post it in the chat shortly. And then Taylor, if you wanted to speak quickly to the Team Canada Trade Mission to Cambodia and Thailand, as well as the Canadian Technology Accelerator, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Yeah, hi everybody. So Taylor Bentley from the Trade Commissioner Service. Yeah, as folks will know, federal government is currently prorogued, but the bureaucracy is going on as normal. So we were waiting to see whether these things like these programs, these funded programs, including Team Canada Trade Missions, which are led by the minister, the trade minister, so they confirmed that they are still going on. So not only is there the Australia one coming up soon, where Minister Ng will be leading, but also the Thailand and Cambodia. And for all of these Team Canada trade missions, they've all focused on Asia Pacific, and they've all focused on the full suite of ag tech, food tech, and agri-food. There is huge demand for Canadian goods, Canadian partners as well. And that will, continue. And of course, everything we're seeing kind of with the US, I think is only going to encourage greater trade diversification, greater emphasis on the Asia Pacific region, and probably some more activities in upcoming trade missions for as long as either this government or our next government's in power. The other part, so it doesn't initially look like an ag tech opportunity. It's listed as Macau entertainment technology, but it's for a show. It's for a show that's very innovation focused. And when you look at the exhibitors, they're huge. They're all of the large Chinese companies that you've probably heard of, and many that I could not pronounce, but very large corporate investors that are looking for ag tech, food tech opportunities. So as I say, that Canadian Technology Accelerator is listed as entertainment tech, but it does have food and ag tech opportunities. And that's also very specific, or that's a very tailored experience. So the folks, my counterparts in Macau will actually help folks who are applying find those right opportunities for their specific sectors. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions about that or any other issues in general. But yeah, looking forward to continuing some of this work. I know it's kind of an uncertain time, but the Trade Commissioner Service has been here for hundreds of years, so we'll continue to service you guys as best we can. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, Taylor. And I don't know if it was you. I lumped them together. The Polaris Pitch Competition. There is a note from Matt that it says January 27th. Do you happen to know if that deadline was extended?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just to today. So, and it's a very quick application from Tech Alliance, and they're actually getting support from our RHA as well. So it should be great.
Thank you. All right. Were there any other funding opportunities that are not listed in the agenda, or anybody that wanted to touch base on any of their other opportunities?
I thought I heard an announcement about OFCAF re-releasing some funds. I'm not sure if anybody else has heard that, the Climate Action Fund.
I will add in through the Sengen Living Lab services, there is funding available for innovation projects whereby an SME themselves is looking to test, validate, or optimize something on their technology solution. There's up to $250,000 available. That's based on a 40% reimbursement rate. And then for adoption projects whereby you bring a customer to the table to try and de-risk the validation and onboarding and adoption and closing the sale with that potential end user, there's up to $500,000 available to support those projects, again at a 40% reimbursement rate. And I'd be happy to present further details at another info session once we actually launch these two living labs that are agricultural based. So we haven't opened applications for those living labs. That's why I'm not officially stating who the partners are for those, but I would love to provide more details, but just wanted to set the stage that there will be funding available and something coming to support the sector. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Lisa. And if you want, in the meantime, just to obviously if it's not launched yet, but you can just send us the information and then we'll say follow up for more details, pardon me. And then, yeah, definitely we'd love to have you present at a future meeting as well.
Sure, I would be pleased to. If anyone is like, what is CENGN? It's spelled CENGN, Center of Excellence in Next Generation Networks. But I'd be pleased to send some information along. Thank you.
Excellent. And Lisa, just for you as well, in case you didn't see, we did have somebody request your contact information, if you wouldn't mind throwing that in the chat. Excellent. All right. So I think if there are no other items for discussion, I'll just open it up to the round table in case anyone else has anything they wanted to mention.
Bridget, to stand, I just want to mention there will be a link to the video recording of yesterday's AgBox working group. If anybody wants to go back and view that, I'll send it to Dan. He can put it in the email for next week's meeting.
Fantastic. Yes, we'd be happy to include that. It sounds like your voice is going a little bit, so if you're not able to give a quick, but just if you want to give a quick overview of how that meeting went, we're happy to hear it.
Well, so the idea of the AgBox is to create an open source computing, centralized computing for AgTech ventures. Mainly the startup guys would have on day one a box that they can start writing software to, provide standards across all the vendors for interoperability, and we're formalizing and we're writing articles of incorporation for a nonprofit to develop this group officially. It'll report under a standards group. And next phase for us is to actually start signing up members and getting some funding from both Canadian and United States governments so we can get this thing going. Dan, can you touch on the DeepSeek? Sure. I call it propaganda seek. It's just another, it's very overblown. Yes, they've done some innovative things, but nothing ground shaking that the rest of us have been doing. They've shown some improvements to training mostly, and most everything that we're involved with ag tech is really inference being edge applications. We're building machines that make decisions and control robots and drive vehicles. Mainly DeepSeek is about training the models for those applications. So it's a bit complementary where people think, oh my gosh, now the Chinese have beaten us in this AI war, and it's just not true. But on the other hand, you have to give them credit. It shows a very increased level of technology development from just 10 years ago. So the momentum is behind them. I think geopolitics are going to make it difficult for going forward with this. But in general, I agree with Chuck. We're at the very, very beginning of AI applications into ag tech. In 10 years from now, it'll be very, very different from what you see today. We're just starting to learn how to drive vehicles. We're getting accuracies and speeds now. We're able to detect weeds and crops at 47 milliseconds, where the current state of the art was 250. So we've gotten 5 times faster. Well, if we can see them faster and recognize them and identify them, locate them, and aim things faster, will the whole vehicle go faster? That means we get better returns on investment. We're also getting a lot less power consumption. So towards the process of electrification. So working with people like Monarch, obviously being able to reduce power by 600-700 watts per vehicle is a big improvement in battery life. And so all good things are happening. Back to the thing, DeepSeek, it's technology being in motion. You should expect to see this different areas of the world. I know we're working with Kutrium in India as well, and you should expect to start seeing some cool AI announcements out of that part of the world as well. So don't be, I guess, there's a little bit of paranoia going on when you see the stock market drop that much in just one day. You go, really? That's anyway. Just take a deep breath. It's good. It's not bad. I'll stop there.
And there was a quick mention from Barry, if you just want to have a second, Dan, to throw your the group in the chat there for him. Alrighty. If there are no other roundtable ideas or discussions, I will bring this week's meeting to a close. I just wanted to give a big thanks again to Geoff for his presentation this morning. Thanks for joining us, everybody, today. And we hopefully will see you next week. Hopefully Dan will be back for next week's meeting, and we'll go from there. All right. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Take care.